Now, something we really don't want to happen when we're playing, whether comping or improvising, is losing our place, losing where we are in the form of the song. To begin with though, let's look at 3 standards with classic places people would get lost. The most common form for a jazz standard is AABA. Now, on its own, that doesn't sound too difficult. And the problem arises is people go into the B section too early. And actually, if I wrote out AABA, if you imagine you played a song 4 times through, which isn't that long, look at all those A's, and you get those 3 A's next to each other where you've got the A after the B and then the next 2 A's at the beginning of the next time round. So what often happens is on the end of A1, if someone's not concentrating, not been thinking about where they are, they might go to that B section 8 bars too early and essentially go A, B, A rather than A, A, B, A. Other standards present the problem of staying on a chord for a long time, and that either means someone will move too soon to the next chord or move too late. Take a song like Caravan, where the basic chord changes would be, the first bit would be C7 for 12 bars. Now, that for someone getting used to playing a standard can be tricky to know when to change, and people might go early or they might go late and just lose how many bars they've done, which, I'll cover how to avoid that happening in this video. Another example might be standards with odd form and different kind of length sections. So a lovely song like Old Devil Moon, one that I play, that's got a really peculiar form, lots of sections with different bar lengths. It's not very standard in many ways, but it's a lovely song to play, but difficult to memorize and therefore probably quite easy to get lost in. First thing that I think makes the biggest difference with this is really knowing the tune well. And by that I mean not needing a piece of music, like say if you took the song Honeysuckle Rose, you could whistle it, hum it, imagine it in your head, and you could attach that to the chords. So if you're comping, you could imagine the sound of that melody. So I have done this on the bandstand before when I'm trying to get through chord changes of not a song that isn't as familiar as I'd quite like, and I would be thinking this in my head, and so on, and that would help me get through the form because I would be following the thread of the tune, if you like, which means that I'm not going to deviate from the form or jump to a section too early. The second thing that really helps is internalizing the sound of the chord changes. And by that I mean you can play the chords to a standard, you can use a real book, iReal, and follow that along. Fine, that's the start point. Over time, you want to memorize those chords, not just on the fretboard, not just in the fingers and the chord shapes that you've got to play, but up here, the sound of the chord changes, maybe not just the chord to chord, but the actual, the movements that you get, the points of resolution, the interesting chords. And by that I mean, if you took Autumn Leaves, when I play that chord, can you hear the next chord? Think and trying to give a gap for you to try and imagine it. And hopefully when I play the chord, it's not a surprise to you, the sound of it, and it's just confirming what you can hear in your head. And that's kind of when songs take on a little bit more life within you, I think. And you go beyond just playing shapes, and you can hear that in your head. You can hear those chord movements, those chord changes. If you imagine the song, you can vividly hear it. And that takes time. You have to play songs over a long period of time to be able to internalize the sound of them, but it's the key. It's also the real fundamental key to soloing, because I think it's really hard to solo over chord changes if you don't know the sound of the next chord. And further to that point, there's not just internalizing the sound of the chord changes, there's internalizing and feeling the sound of 8 bars. This sounds a bit vague, I know, but most of these jazz tunes are in 8-bar chunks. The one I mentioned earlier, Old Devil Moon, definitely not. You got some bits that are 10 bars, some bits at 6, some bits which are 8, which is why it's a tricky tune to get down. But yeah, most tunes work in 8-bar chunks, and so you want to learn to naturally feel that. If you had to play 8 bars of the same chord, would you have to count 8 bars? Because I think that I would just feel that because I'm so used to playing that length of a section. And I do think that's just something that comes with experience and just playing standards and playing lots of this music, listening to lots of this music. You get conditioned to those sort of lengths. It means you're less likely to move early because you learn to feel the length of a section correctly. The third thing is listening for cues. Now, what I mean by this is you'll notice experienced musicians, they punctuate the end of sections and make it obvious when we're changing section. I think not just to help other people on the stage, but quite often people will do that, but also just for the listener as well, to kind of make it obvious when moving on to the next section, make it flow well. So if I took Autumn Leaves, like if I just played the changes up to the start of the B section and I don't do any cues, just play the chords, there I'm back into the next A section. End of the second A. Start the B. I didn't do anything to really mark the changes. So this time if I play it, what I'm going to do is at the end of the first A section, I'm going to play a little walk up with some inversions. So we walk back up to the A minor, and I'll do something maybe rhythmic to make it obvious we're going into a different section when the B section arrives. So like, this can all stay the same. We're on the first A. On the E minor, I'm going to walk up. That led me back into the B. That wouldn't, sorry, in this A, it wouldn't take me into the B. It sounded really weird. So to get ready for the B, so I did something like that, kind of said, hey, we're going somewhere else here, guys. There you go. So that's the kind of thing. Also, you'll notice that on recordings and on good backing tracks. Fourth tip is playing to the form. Now this works both from a rhythm guitar and a lead guitar perspective. It might be that you play the rhythm or the way you do the chords slightly differently in the B to the A. It might be in your soloing, you do something very different on the B section. Maybe you got A, A, B, A, and it's single note line in the A sections, and on that B section you go to octaves or chords for your soloing, just to make it different. That's a really good way to kind of play your way through the form. It also goes with the feeling of the song, I think, and the flow of the song. Say a song like Take the A Train, you could play the A sections with a Charleston rhythm. Second A. And so on, what I did there, Charleston on the A's, swing on the B. You obviously might not want to do that all the way through, but it can be a good way, you know, to really outline that form. Point 5 is to talk yourself through the changes. So when, say if I was just doing that same song just there, A1. When the next A comes round, I say in my head A2. When the B, you know, I have done that before many years ago, but where I would just literally say A1, A2, B, A3. It's A3 you want to think of, because then you got A1. And that can be a way just to get you through, just thinking, oh yeah, I'm on the A1. Okay, we started A2. And you know, we're all different. Sometimes some of us lose concentration for whatever, so sometimes like trying to coach ourselves through a song like that, it might be necessary for some of us. And a sixth and final point, what do you do if you're playing with someone else and someone gets lost? If it's a soloist, ideally you're in a situation where people are listening to each other, not just heads down playing in their own world. And what will often happen is the rhythm section will realise they've gone to the B too early. You know, a good soloist, it will be obvious if the chord changes are different. You'll hear, they've gone to the B too early. So if the kind of soloist is lost in their own world, then the rhythm section can then go with that, maybe. It's a tricky one. The key thing is someone takes charge, eye contact, someone says, top of the tune, A, go to the B. But the key thing is just listening, really. Listening to each other. And then when you're playing yourself, making sure you're not that person that gets lost, using some of the strategies that I've mentioned today. And if you're a soloist, sometimes you might have to pause and take a breath and listen and work out where you are. That can happen too. But hopefully these tips help. But if you've got any others that you've figured out for yourself, or that you like, that you've learned, then do leave them in the comments below. I don't think many people talk about this as kind of an issue, but I think it's something, that's really important. You don't want to be that person getting lost, so try to avoid it with these strategies. If you've got any questions, any comments, leave them below. Don't forget, jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday. Until next time, you take care.